Have you ever walked into a room and felt something was quietly off? The lighting is fine, the layout looks clean, but somehow your mind feels heavier, your breath shallower, your thoughts scattered. And what if the cause isn't what's in front of you, but what's being silently repeated? Not through sound, not through people, but through reflection. Today, we're going to talk about mirrors, not as decoration, not as utility, but as energetic gateways, amplifiers of the invisible forces that shape your home and your state of mind. Because in Feng Shui, a mirror doesn't just show what is, it multiplies it. Whatever it faces, it echoes. If it reflects warmth, abundance, or peace, it doubles those blessings. But if it reflects clutter, conflict, or emptiness, it quietly deepens the very energy you're trying to escape. I've spent decades studying the energetic layers of space, weaving Buddhist insight with the forgotten logic of old-world Feng Shui. And one thing is clear, the way your mirror is placed can either protect your well-being or unravel it. Before we go deeper into these mirror truths, if this kind of teaching brings value to your life, please help me with a smiley gesture. One like, one share, one subscribe. Your support helps New Day Mindfulness reach 1,000 followers, so I can continue sharing teachings that don't just inform, but transform. Now take a look around you, wherever you are. What is your mirror reflecting? And is it something you want more of? Let's explore why one small shift in reflection might just shift everything. Section 1, Beyond Reflection, what mirrors really represent in Feng Shui. In the world of Feng Shui, few objects stir as much misunderstanding and as much energetic impact as mirrors. They are everywhere, often placed for aesthetics or illusion of space, sometimes simply inherited with the architecture of the home. But their true role is rarely considered deeply. A mirror is not passive, it is not neutral. In Feng Shui, it is understood as a dynamic participant in the energetic environment, an amplifier of vibration, a ripple maker in the field of qi. And once you begin to see mirrors not just as decorative tools, but as multipliers, agents of duplication, of energetic echo, your relationship with them fundamentally changes. Imagine for a moment that mirrors are not static surfaces, but liquid stillness, water in vertical form. Whatever they receive, they do not just reflect, they magnify, extend, project into the space around them. This is why mirrors facing beauty create more beauty, and why mirrors facing chaos or void can accelerate depletion. The metaphor of water is not poetic exaggeration, it is energetically precise. Water in Feng Shui is associated with flow, wealth, memory, and depth. Mirrors, like water, are formless, yet reactive. They cannot initiate, but they can extend. They cannot choose, but they can amplify. And therein lies both their usefulness and their danger. From a symbolic point of view, mirrors are gatekeepers, not to other realms in the mystical sense, but to the energetic future of a space. Whatever they are pointed toward becomes a proposal. May there be more of this. And unless we consciously choose what our mirrors propose, we may find ourselves repeating patterns we never intended to affirm. A mirror facing a dining table suggests an invitation to abundant meals and shared joy. But a mirror facing an empty hallway, or worse, a cluttered storage area, echoes scarcity or stagnation into the air. The practice of Feng Shui is not about fear or superstition. It is about observation. Quiet observation. And when you look at your mirrors through this lens, you begin to notice what they're really doing. Not just showing, but shaping. In homes where mirrors face the front door, for example, energy doesn't just circulate, it often rushes out. The qi, having just entered, is reflected directly back toward the exit, causing a metaphorical and literal draining effect. Residents in such homes may find it difficult to rest, retain wealth, or feel rooted. They may feel like fortune knocks but never stays. The placement of a mirror is, in that sense, a vote, for or against the stabilization of energy. Mirrors beside beds are particularly impactful. In Feng Shui, the bedroom is sacred. It is where yin energy, soft, slow, healing, must be allowed to gather. When a mirror is placed opposite the bed, however, it invites yang activity into a yin sanctuary. The mirror reflects the sleeping body, creating an illusion of doubling, which energetically can fragment the mind and disturb the rest. This effect is even more pronounced when combined with dim lighting or nocturnal shadows, where the subconscious perceives movement, a second presence, or subtle visual stimulation during the most vulnerable hours of restoration. Some clients describe feeling watched, even in the absence of any external disturbance. Others report broken sleep, shallow rest, or a chronic difficulty in relaxing the nervous system. In most cases, the simple act of removing or covering the mirror transforms the sleep environment, and the body responds in kind. Mirrors that face workstations, on the other hand, offer a more complex reading. In some Feng Shui schools, a mirror that reflects the desk or work area is considered beneficial. It doubles productivity, energizes action, and creates a sense of expansion. But again, intention is everything. If the mirror reflects a clean, organized, focused workspace, then it amplifies that quality. But if it reflects mess, clutter, or technological overload, it may instead deepen stress and distraction. The mirror doesn't know the difference. It simply says yes to whatever it sees. Therefore, the wisdom here is not whether to place a mirror or not, but what the mirror reflects. Always ask, what story is this mirror repeating? What emotion is it multiplying? What direction is it pushing key toward? Is it anchoring peace or chasing the mind in loops? The Buddhist view on mirrors offers an even more nuanced reflection, pun fully intended. In many Mahayana and Zen traditions, the mind is described as a mirror, fundamentally empty, inherently pure, but easily obscured. Just as a mirror collects dust, the mind accumulates attachments, opinions, aversions, and projections. When the mirror of the mind is clean, it reflects reality without distortion. But when smeared with craving and fear, it creates illusion. This metaphor is strikingly aligned with the Feng Shui understanding. A mirror, like the mind, will reflect what is there, but not what is true. It cannot discern essence from surface. It cannot correct for your confusion. It only reflects it back to you more intensely. In this way, mirrors in our homes function as extensions of the mental environment we inhabit. If your life feels scattered, look first to the reflections around you. Not the symbolic ones, though they matter, but the literal ones. Is there fragmentation in your visual field? Are your eyes landing on overlapping images, disordered repetition, or false depth? The mind absorbs these micro-patterns and translates them into mood, attention, and subtle posture. The nervous system reacts even when the conscious mind doesn't notice. This is why mirrors across from staircases, for example, can cause energetic confusion. Stairs represent movement, transition, rise or descent. A mirror bouncing this image back can create a loop, like a breath that never completes its exhale. It can lead to restlessness, indecision, or scattered focus. In homes where ambition is high but grounding is low, this setup often appears. People working hard, striving upward, but never feeling settled. Feng Shui doesn't see this as coincidence. It sees it as a signature of qi flow. Similarly, mirrors in kitchens require caution. The kitchen is associated with the fire element, nourishment, transformation, and in some schools, wealth. A mirror that reflects the stove, for instance, can sometimes double the fire, leading to imbalances such as increased arguments, digestive issues, or volatile emotions. But in some contexts, especially when paired with the wood element, or near water sources, a mirror can help harmonize the energy if placed intentionally. The key again is not dogma, but discernment. What does the space need? What is it lacking? And what would a mirror multiply? In spiritual homes, those with altars, prayer space, or sacred images, the mirror becomes even more potent. When placed to reflect symbols of virtue, wisdom, or devotion, the mirror acts almost like a mantra, repeating the sacred, reminding the eye of the inner path. But this must be done with humility. A mirror that reflects a statue of the Buddha, for example, should never face a bathroom or garbage bin. That placement becomes not a reflection of reverence, but of ignorance. Just as a practitioner would not chant the Dharma in a market of shouting merchants, a mirror must not repeat the sacred in spaces of disorder. Energy moves in spirals. It listens to form, and it responds to intention. Let us take a moment to return to metaphor. A mirror is water. Water flows where there is slope. It takes the shape of its container, but it also remembers. In Japanese culture, there is the concept of Shinra Bunsho, the mirror of all things, where the universe is reflected in the smallest particle. In Buddhist scripture, there is the parable of the moon reflected in 10,000 rivers. Each mirror reflects the same light, but the quality of the reflection depends on the stillness of the surface. In your home, the mirror is one of those rivers. Will it reflect chaos or calm? Will it ripple with noise or hold a single clear moon? This brings us to the practical application. Mirrors must be placed with awareness of both what they face and what they extend. The direction of a mirror is a directional spell. It sends chi where it is not yet present. It enhances where there is already strength or distorts where there is already imbalance. Therefore, when you next look at a mirror, ask not only what you see, but where the energy is going. What is being mirrored into your life again and again? Is it softness? Is it clarity? Or is it an unresolved emotion you didn't even realize was on loop? And this is perhaps the deepest truth of all. A mirror is not there to decorate your space. It is there to declare something. Consciously or not, every mirror in your home is making a statement. The question is, are you listening? Section 2. 5 mirror mistakes that quietly erode energy. 1. Facing the bed, restlessness, and scattered chi. There is perhaps no mirror placement more underestimated and yet more impactful than one that faces the bed. At first glance, the idea may seem trivial or even aesthetically pleasing. After all, in modern interior design, mirrors are often used to create a sense of openness, to reflect light, and to visually expand small rooms. A mirror opposite the bed can bounce back soft lamplight, give the illusion of a larger space, and even be seen as romantic in some Western sensibilities. But when viewed through the lens of classical Feng Shui and Buddhist-informed energy awareness, such a placement is not only unwise, it is energetically invasive. In the wisdom traditions of Asia, especially those that intersect Taoist spatial harmonics and Buddhist psychology, the bedroom is not just a private room. It is a chamber of recalibration. It is where the most delicate layers of chi, life force, soften into restoration. It is where the autonomic nervous system releases, the subconscious unknots, and the soul, as some would say, returns to center. The bed, then, is not merely a sleeping surface. It is a symbolic sanctuary for the most yin activity a human body engages in: stillness, vulnerability, and surrender. And here lies the first fundamental conflict. A mirror, by nature, is a yang object, not in material alone, but in function. It is active, it responds, it echoes, it duplicates, it generates a visual dynamic, even in darkness, even in silence. So when a mirror is placed directly facing a bed, especially at foot level or across the horizontal body line, it introduces active, stimulating energy into a field meant for rest. It splits what should be whole. It repeats what should be integrated. The result is not always dramatic, but it is persistent. Many people with this setup report feeling agitated without knowing why. Some say they have trouble falling asleep. Others wake frequently in the night. Even more subtle, many report strange or disjointed dreams, a sense of unrest in the early morning hours, or waking with tightness in the chest or unease in the solar plexus. These are not always conditions with medical causes. They are often energetic mismatches. Because when the body seeks to rest and the environment continues to reflect back activity, even visually, there is no true descent into deep yin. The conscious mind may be asleep, but the energy field is not still. It is caught in a feedback loop, a doubling of presence, an echo of the self. In Buddhist metaphor, the mind is often called a mirror, but that mirror is meant to be still, pure, ungrasping. A physical mirror facing the bed, by contrast, is more like a disturbed reflection. It fragments, it agitates, it captures without permission. The subconscious, especially during sleep, is porous. It receives impressions easily, and if the last visual imprint before sleep is a reflection of the self, or worse, a vague shape in the dark, that can induce micro-anxieties, repeated nightly until the body simply forgets how to fully surrender. I once worked with a client who was highly skeptical of Feng Shui. She was a lawyer in her mid-30s, lived alone, and suffered from persistent sleep issues. Her sleep was shallow. She awoke frequently. She described herself as always mentally tired, but never physically restored. Sleep clinics found nothing abnormal. When I visited her apartment, the issue was immediate: a full-length mirror directly opposite her bed. It spanned nearly 4 feet tall and reflected her from head to toe every night. She said she liked the elegance and needed it to check her outfits, but admitted she often felt uneasy when passing it in the dark. I asked her to do something simple: cover it with a neutral toned scarf, something non-reflective and soft, for 21 days. She hesitated but agreed. Within a week, her sleep lengthened. She began waking only once a night. By the 3rd week, she was sleeping through the night completely, something that hadn't happened in over a year. She called me, half joking, and said, "I didn't move houses, I didn't buy a new mattress, but that mirror, it was stealing my sleep." Of course, the mirror didn't steal anything. It simply never stopped giving back what was no longer needed: an image of activity. And that is the core issue. A mirror facing the bed doesn't rest when you rest. It remains alert. Its visual field remains charged. It reflects the body in its most defenseless posture, which can register in the subtle layers of the psyche as exposure. Even in dim lighting, the human eye detects form, shadow, and motion. In the dark, a mirror becomes an unstable canvas, shifting faint light sources, reflecting silhouettes, suggesting shapes. This uncertainty creates low-grade vigilance in the body. The result? The sympathetic nervous system, which should recede during sleep, remains partially activated. Cortisol levels remain higher. The repair systems of the body, the parasympathetic functions, are inhibited. Over time, this can manifest not just as insomnia, but as anxiety, fatigue, or even hormonal imbalances. This isn't esoteric. It is somatic. The body responds to its field, and the mirror expands that field in unpredictable ways. There is another dimension too, more subtle but no less real. In relationships, a mirror facing the bed can reflect back not just one body, but 2. And in doing so, it creates the illusion of a third presence. This may seem abstract, but in sensitive couples, it can result in subconscious discomfort, especially if the reflection of the pair creates angular distortions or overlaps with dark shapes in the room. In traditional Feng Shui, this is considered a disturbance of intimacy. The mirror does not just reflect the physical, it mirrors the emotional atmosphere. And if that atmosphere is already strained, the mirror amplifies it. Arguments may increase, resentment may linger. The sleep field, instead of being a refuge, becomes a stage, one where the performance never truly ends. Children, too, are particularly susceptible. In households where mirrors are placed near children's beds, whether facing directly or diagonally, restless sleep, night terrors, or anxiety may develop. Children are energetically open. Their boundaries are not yet solidified. A mirror near their sleep field reflects not just their movement, but may suggest another presence, especially in the half-lucid states of falling asleep or waking. Many parents overlook this. They install mirrored wardrobes for function, or install decorative mirrors without realizing that to a child, the room is not static. It is alive. It is responsive. And a mirror that reflects their small form back to them, especially at night, can feel disorienting. So what is the solution? The answer is not to fear mirrors. It is to use them consciously. If your bedroom contains a mirror directly facing the bed, the first recommendation is to relocate it. This may be difficult in smaller rooms or apartments, but creative solutions exist. A mirror can be angled to reflect a wall instead of the bed. It can be placed behind a door, or it can be designed to be covered using fabric panels, sliding doors, or even decorative cloths. In the Buddhist tradition, even altars are covered at night, not out of fear, but out of respect for stillness. The same principle applies here. A mirror that is covered during sleep becomes neutral. It is no longer active. It no longer doubles your presence. It allows the room to hold quietness rather than echoing form. Some ask whether mirrored ceilings or mirrored headboards are problematic. The answer is yes, more so in fact. A mirror above the body carries even more potent yang pressure. It hangs above the field of vulnerability, and even if placed there for aesthetic or sensual appeal, its long-term energetic toll often outweighs its short-term novelty. People living under mirrored ceilings often report shallow breathing during sleep, headaches upon waking, or emotional agitation. In terms of Qi, the ceiling represents heaven, the overarching source of influence. A mirror there does not calm, it charges. And for the human system, too much upward activity at night destabilizes the inner compass. Symbolically, sleep is death's rehearsal. It is the daily practice of release. In Buddhism, it is one of the 8 gates to liberation, where identity loosens, ego dissolves, and karmic seeds surface in dreams. To sleep deeply is to heal. To rest fully is to reset not only the body but the mind stream. A mirror facing the bed interrupts that descent. It doesn't allow the full letting go. It mirrors identity when identity should fade. And in doing so, it keeps the wheel spinning when it should be still. Thus, the teaching here is simple. Prioritize peace over design. Let sleep be whole, not fractured. Let the yin field remain uninterrupted. Your bedroom is your retreat, not a reflection of style, but a mirror of silence. 2. Facing the main door, repelling fortune. There is an ancient principle in the art of Feng Shui that says the first breath a home takes determines its vitality. In other words, where energy enters, how it enters, and what greets it, establishes the underlying character of the space. This breath, this gateway, is the front door, the mouth of Qi. It is not just a structural necessity, but a metaphysical portal, a symbolic beginning point for every cycle within the household. In Chinese metaphysical texts, the front door is often called the mouth of the dragon, signifying not only the physical threshold between interior and exterior, but the energetic contract between the individual and the world beyond. And yet, in countless homes, this sacred threshold is quietly disrupted by one common mistake: the placement of a mirror directly facing the main door. To the casual observer, placing a mirror near or opposite the entrance might seem harmless, perhaps even desirable. It can give the illusion of more space. It can bounce natural light into the foyer. It can create a sense of openness or symmetry. Interior designers often suggest it as a way to brighten narrow halls or reflect decorative elements. But in the energetic science of Feng Shui, a mirror facing the front door is a serious disruption. It reverses the current. Instead of inviting energy in and allowing it to nourish the home, the mirror bounces that energy back outward the moment it arrives. Imagine pouring water into a bowl, only to have the water immediately leap back out. This is the energetic equivalent. Qi, which is meant to enter and circulate, is deflected, repelled, blocked before it even begins its journey through the living environment. This seemingly minor architectural detail can have significant effects over time. Residents of such homes often report issues with financial instability, unexpected expenses, difficulty maintaining long-term success, or a general feeling that opportunities come but never stay. There is a consistent energetic signature, an inability to retain, to hold, to anchor fortune and turn it into growth. These homes may be beautiful. Their occupants may be intelligent, hardworking, spiritually attuned. And yet, life in such a space often feels like trying to catch rain with open hands. Blessings arrive, but they slip through before they can be integrated. I recall working with a couple in their mid-40s, both entrepreneurs, both highly competent, both exhausted. Their home was a modern masterpiece. Tall ceilings, minimalist aesthetics, natural textures, but something wasn't flowing. Their businesses were surviving, but not thriving. They described their financial life as spinning its wheels despite their best efforts. They had trouble maintaining consistent momentum. When I entered their home, I immediately noticed the culprit: a large designer mirror mounted on the wall directly opposite the front door. It was gorgeous, framed in black walnut, with beveled edges and a museum-quality finish. But energetically, it was catastrophic. It reflected every drop of entering Qi and sent it straight back out the door. I explained the traditional understanding. that this mirror was essentially rejecting the fortune before it could be received, that they were unknowingly greeting every opportunity with resistance. At first, they hesitated. The mirror had cost thousands. It had been custom commissioned. But after discussing potential alternatives, relocating it to a side wall, repurposing it in a different room, replacing it with art that invited energy inward, they agreed. The mirror was removed within the week. In its place, we installed a piece of soft-textured, nature-inspired artwork that depicted a river flowing gently toward the viewer. We added a small potted jade plant in the corner, and on the adjacent wall hung a wooden shelf with symbolic items meaningful to the couple. A family heirloom, a piece of driftwood collected on their travels, a simple gold coin resting in a ceramic bowl. Within 3 months, their experience of the home had transformed. They felt calmer, clearer. Their sleep improved. But more importantly, one of them received an unexpected offer to partner in a high-profile project. The other landed a client that had been evasive for months. Their businesses didn't just rebound, they surged forward. They told me later that it wasn't just the external change that mattered. It was how they felt walking into their own home. "We're not bouncing off the walls anymore," the wife said. "It feels like the house is holding us again." And that is the essence of this adjustment. A mirror facing the door doesn't just reflect light, it reflects qi. And qi is the invisible scaffold of life. When it is held, it stabilizes. When it is repelled, it weakens everything it touches. Symbolically, a mirror at the door sends the message: nothing stays. And even if we do not believe this consciously, our homes begin to operate from that script. In Buddhist terms, this is a form of unintentional karma, not caused by ill intent, but by lack of awareness. We inherit the effects of our spaces just as we inherit the effects of our actions. The door represents invitation, entry, and welcome. The mirror, when facing the door, becomes a refusal, a rejection. And over time, that refusal permeates the psyche of the home. There are also more subtle layers to this dynamic. A mirror across from the door can confuse guests or residents energetically. In Taoist practice, the body follows qi. When qi is reversed or scattered, the body experiences disorientation. In homes with this setup, people may feel rushed upon entering or strangely ungrounded. Children may run through the space rather than settling. Pets may hesitate at the threshold. Arguments may occur more frequently near the entrance. This is not superstition. It is environmental psychology understood through a different vocabulary. Furthermore, the mirror may amplify visual noise. If the entrance leads directly to a busy street, or if the door is often open to chaotic outside views, the mirror will reflect that chaos deeper into the home. In a sense, it brings the instability of the outside world into the heart of your sanctuary. For sensitive individuals, this can result in chronic low-grade stress, anxiety, or overstimulation, especially if the mirror also reflects clutter, sharp angles, or areas with heavy traffic flow. The home becomes a hall of echoes rather than a haven of stillness. So what then is the solution? It depends on the layout of the home. Ideally, mirrors should never be placed directly facing the main entrance. But if relocation is not an option, there are alternatives. You may install a folding screen between the door and the mirror to buffer the reflection. You may angle the mirror slightly so that it reflects a peaceful corner or a symbol of abundance rather than the open door. You may reduce its angles or frame it in a soft, non-metallic material to ground its energetic bounce. You may also shift focus from visual utility to symbolic invitation. Let the entrance reflect what you want to multiply, whether it's beauty, balance, or stability. More importantly, consider what your front door currently reflects. Does it face a hallway cluttered with shoes and mail? A cold, blank wall? An open bathroom door? Each of these carries symbolic implications. Instead of a mirror, you might try placing a vertical scroll with calligraphy or an image that evokes rootedness. In Buddhist homes, it's common to place a small altar or flower arrangement near the entrance, reminding all who enter, in the qi itself, that this is a sacred space. And above all, remember this: qi moves in response to attention. The moment you observe the flow of energy in your space, it begins to shift. The act of becoming aware is itself an adjustment. And when you treat your entrance not as an overlooked corridor, but as a point of dialogue with the universe, you begin to reorient not just your home, but your fate. In this way, removing a mirror from the front door becomes an act of intentionality, a reclaiming, a declaration, I am ready to receive. It is a decision not to reject life's blessings before they arrive. It is a choice to hold rather than deflect. And like all choices made in alignment with balance, it carries ripple effects far beyond the physical wall. In the end, the question is not, does a mirror face your door? The question is, does your home welcome what you hope to hold? If the answer is no, you now know where to begin. 3. Facing dead walls or empty corners, amplifying stagnation. In the quiet language of Feng Shui, one principle repeats across time and geography. Energy follows intention, and intention is shaped by attention. In every space, whether vast or compact, old or newly constructed, the attention we give to placement reveals the invisible maps we're drawing across our lives. And perhaps nowhere is this more subtly misunderstood than in the way we position mirrors toward blank walls or empty corners. At first glance, such a placement appears benign. After all, it doesn't face the bed or door. It doesn't reflect clutter or motion. It's often placed out of convenience, framed in stylish decor, sometimes hung for symmetry's sake or to balance a narrow corridor. But in energetic terms, a mirror facing a dead zone, a wall with no depth, a corner with no life, a structural void, is not inert. It is an echo chamber for stagnation. To understand this, we must revisit what a mirror truly does. A mirror does not see, it repeats. It does not process, it amplifies. It doesn't judge or translate or filter. It simply accepts what is in front of it and returns it with full visual fidelity, broadcasting it into the room's field of energy. This is not poetic exaggeration. It is the energetic law at the heart of traditional spatial wisdom. What is reflected is what is multiplied. So what happens when a mirror faces a blank wall? What is it asked to echo? What movement does it enhance? What life does it double? The answer is nothing. And that is precisely the problem. In Chinese metaphysics, qi needs to circulate. It requires direction, rhythm, invitation. When it is faced with a dead end, especially one that is mirrored, it gets trapped. It doesn't pool in a nourishing way. It becomes stagnant. It thickens. Energetically, this stagnation doesn't just affect the room, it begins to affect the resident's mental clarity, emotional creativity, and physical motivation. Over time, these mirror wall configurations can quietly drain inspiration, anchor hesitation, and reinforce a sense of inertia that becomes difficult to identify because it creeps in so slowly. Imagine, if you will, a mirror facing a cold gray wall. There is no color, no movement, no imagery. The mirror bounces this void back into the room continuously, like an invisible drumbeat repeating a silence. Subconsciously, the residents begin to mirror this pattern. Projects stall, decisions become heavier. The mind loses some of its natural openness. This is not psychological in the Western sense, it is energetic resonance. The environment we live in whispers its story to us every day, and we, unconsciously, take on its rhythm. When the mirror reflects emptiness, the emptiness does not stay in the mirror. It enters the air, enters the eye, and eventually enters the mood. From the Buddhist perspective, this phenomenon can be understood as a form of mirrored delusion, avidya. In Sanskrit, avidya means not just ignorance, but a fundamental misseeing of reality. A mirror that faces deadness becomes a surface that reflects stillness without awareness. And stillness without awareness is not peace, it is confusion. It is the fog of repetition without clarity. In Buddhist practice, stillness is sacred only when it leads to insight. The still lake that reflects the moon becomes beautiful when the water is undisturbed and the viewer is awake. But when the water is dull and the viewer is distracted, even the most beautiful moon becomes a ghostly blur. There is a client I once worked with, a writer, whose office was in a quiet corner of her home. She had placed a round mirror on the far wall, facing directly into a blank drywall space painted in beige. Her intention was innocent, to brighten the room, to make it feel less like a box. But despite her efforts, she found herself increasingly stuck. Her sentences faltered. She couldn't finish chapters. Her thoughts felt like they collapsed back into themselves before completing. When I entered her office, the energy was clear, visually clean, emotionally heavy. I asked her to remove the mirror and replace it with a large botanical print that depicted green leaves flowing outward. She did so with little expectation. 2 weeks later, her writing resumed. Not in a dramatic surge, but like a faucet clearing a clog. It wasn't magic, it was redirection. The mirror had been bouncing nothingness. The plant image gave the mind somewhere to go. The energy began to move again, and the mind followed. There's another dimension to this issue. In Feng Shui, mirrors also serve as communicators. They tell the room what matters. When you place a mirror to face a dead space, you're giving your environment the message. This is what I want to double. And that instruction, even if unconscious, repeats every day. A mirror facing a blank wall says, "Here is where my attention goes." Nowhere. In the long run, such mirroring can subtly reinforce feelings of emotional emptiness, creative fatigue, or even a fear of new beginnings. The mirror reflects not just form, but emotional symbolism. It becomes a daily act of affirming that nothing new is coming. Some homes where this mistake occurs often carry other symptoms: unopened boxes stored for months, art waiting to be hung, half-decorated corners that feel slightly abandoned. The occupants may describe themselves as overwhelmed or unable to get started. And the mirror, in this context, becomes a symbolic accomplice to that pattern. It reflects incompletion and quietly affirms its permanence. In some cases, the mirror is also facing a space with blocked light or a shadowed nook. When this occurs, the reflected darkness becomes more pronounced. What would otherwise be a neutral corner becomes an emotionally loaded absence, a visual void that enters the body as tension or subtle depletion. In spiritual terms, these mirrors act like karmic mirrors, echoing not just the room's structure, but the unresolved hesitations in the inhabitant's life. A man who cannot commit to a relationship places a mirror across from an empty closet. A woman who feels isolated installs a mirror facing a blank hallway with no windows. These decisions are not accidents. They are expressions of the subconscious. And the mirror, as always, repeats. So how do we address this? The solution is simple, but it must be intentional. Mirrors should never reflect spaces devoid of life. Their purpose is to echo vibrancy, light, potential. If a mirror faces a wall, that wall must be animated, visually, energetically, or symbolically. Place a plant there, something with living chi. Add a work of art that invites imagination. Hang a textile with organic movement or a shelf with beloved objects. Let the mirror become a witness to joy, not a mirror of emptiness. Better yet, reposition the mirror entirely, angle it so it captures natural light, a window, a soft lamp, a textured surface that adds dimension and curiosity. If possible, let it reflect people as they enter, not walls that resist them. And if you must leave a mirror where it is, buffer the void it reflects. Paint the wall a richer tone. Frame it with natural wood or woven fiber. Add curvature, add light, add motion. Break the deadness with something that breathes. Mirrors are not to be feared, but they are not to be taken lightly. Their effect is not in their size, but in their alignment. As a final thought, remember this: your mirror is your storyteller. It narrates a silent poem to the room each day. And if the poem repeats only blankness, your spirit will start to echo the same stanza. So ask yourself not, does my mirror look good? But what is it multiplying? Because energy, like water, takes the shape of what it fills. And if that shape is void, then so becomes your flow. There's an old Zen koan that says, when the mind is still, the mirror reflects truth. When the mind is busy, the mirror reflects illusion. The same can be said of space. A mirror placed with awareness reflects intention. A mirror placed without it reflects the absence of it. And in a world already too full of echoes, let your home be one that reflects direction. 4. Reflecting toilets or clutter, multiplying decay. In Feng Shui, mirrors are never considered inert. They are potent reflectors and multipliers of energy, symbolic instruments that hold the capacity to double, intensify, or radiate whatever they are positioned to see. But unlike human perception, Mirrors do not filter meaning. They do not discern beauty from mess, order from chaos, or purity from stagnation. They simply repeat. They amplify what is present, without preference, without judgment. That is their strength, and that is also their risk. Nowhere does this become more consequential than in spaces where mirrors reflect symbols of decay, such as toilets, trash bins, piles of disorder, or neglected corners. When a mirror doubles these areas, it does not just make them more visible. It elevates them to an energetic frequency that reverberates through the environment, introducing friction into the otherwise unseen flow of qi. Let's begin with toilets. In classical feng shui, the bathroom is considered a necessary but energetically problematic space. It houses downward moving water, carries waste away, and represents the domain of release, discharge, and elimination. These are not inherently negative actions. In fact, they are vital to health and life. But from an energetic standpoint, this directional force is associated with loss. Bathrooms, especially those located near entrances or at the center of a home, can symbolize leakage of wealth, of clarity, of vitality. When mirrors are placed in such a way that they reflect toilets directly, the implication is profound. The mirror is actively multiplying the energy of release and loss. It is reflecting the function of elimination, not only physically but symbolically, back into the rest of the space. Over time, this can subtly influence how energy circulates within the household. It may contribute to feelings of depletion, chronic fatigue, or difficulties in retaining income, ideas, or emotional stability. Now consider the psychological effect. Toilets are deeply private fixtures. They represent bodily functions we have learned across cultures to handle discreetly. A mirror reflecting a toilet removes that boundary, pushing the private into the visible. This can create a sense of exposure, vulnerability, or unconscious tension. The body does not rest well in an environment that violates its boundaries, even symbolically. A mirror that reflects the toilet, especially when visible from the hallway, bedroom, or central part of the home, can introduce a visual cue that something is not contained, not closed off, not integrated. It becomes an open loop in the design, both aesthetically and energetically. Even with the lid down, the function of the toilet remains symbolically loud. When mirrored, it becomes louder. I recall a case involving a teenage boy who had been experiencing low appetite, irregular digestion, and vague stomach discomfort for months. His parents had tried dietary changes, removed allergens, even explored stress as a possible factor, but the symptoms persisted. Upon visiting their home, I discovered a large rectangular mirror in the boy's bathroom, mounted across from the toilet. Not only did it reflect the toilet head-on, but its reflection was visible from the hallway whenever the bathroom door was open. The mirror was stylish, frameless, clean, but it was energetically clashing. I recommended they shift the mirror to a different wall where it would reflect the sink and a small indoor plant instead. They also began closing the bathroom door at all times and kept the toilet lid down. Within 4 weeks, the boy's symptoms diminished noticeably. Within 2 months, they had disappeared. No major intervention, no new supplements, just a reorientation of reflective surface and symbolic flow. This is not superstition, it is energetic feedback. The body, especially the digestive system, is deeply attuned to safety and order. It thrives in environments that feel contained, respectful, and energetically harmonious. A mirror that reflects a toilet, even if unconsciously, is sending a signal of exposure and waste. Multiply that image, and the signal intensifies. The gut, often called the second brain, absorbs more than food. It responds to space, rhythm, silence, and light. When the bathroom becomes a source of energetic feedback rather than simple function, the body takes note. Now let's turn to clutter. Clutter is not simply mess, it is delayed decisions. It is visual noise. It is energetic static. And when a mirror is placed in such a way that it reflects clutter, it doubles the frequency of stagnation. A pile of unsorted mail becomes twice as large. A tangled drawer or disorganized countertop spreads into the room's periphery. The mirror does not organize what it reflects, it simply repeats. In Feng Shui, Clutter represents stuck chi. It is energy that has nowhere to go, intentions left unfinished, items without purpose or placement. When you place a mirror to reflect that clutter, you make it louder, more persistent, more difficult to ignore. Not because it actually grows, but because its impact increases. The mind too begins to echo that pattern. Thought becomes scattered, focus becomes elusive, priorities blur. I once worked with a couple who had a long hallway mirror that faced their laundry room. The laundry space, like in many homes, was often in flux, overflowing baskets, unmatched socks, open detergent bottles. The mirror, framed in a rustic wood style, was placed there to make the hall feel longer. But in doing so, it doubled the disorder, making it appear endless. The couple reported feelings of constant busyness, irritability, and a strange aversion to walking past that part of the house. Once we removed the mirror and replaced it with a framed textile, soft, quiet, without reflection, the hallway changed. The sound even changed. Less echo, more calm. The laundry was still there, of course, but it no longer spread energetically into the whole corridor. The clutter was no longer being multiplied. The same principle applies in kitchens, offices, entryways. Wherever clutter accumulates, avoid mirroring it. In Buddhist thought, mirrors are sometimes used in metaphor to describe mind. A clear mirror reflects all things, but clings to none. When the mind is clouded, it reflects confusion. When a physical mirror reflects disorder, it begins to create that confusion, not in belief, but in atmosphere. The room begins to feel heavier. One's own attention becomes more fragmented. Even the smallest task can begin to feel slightly more difficult, not because of time, but because of energetic resistance. So how do we correct this? The first step is not removal, but redirection. What does the mirror currently see, and what could it see instead? In bathrooms, ensure that mirrors face calm elements: a ceramic basin, a flower, a neutral shelf with folded towels. Close the toilet lid at all times and keep the door closed when possible. In cluttered zones, either remove the mirror or shift its angle to reflect a cleaner, calmer surface. You can also buffer a cluttered reflection by partially covering the mirror or by reframing it, physically and symbolically, with plants, textiles, or soft lighting to reduce its reflective intensity. In cases where a mirror is unavoidable, make its purpose conscious. Place intention behind it. Let it reflect vitality, a healthy plant, a bowl of fruit, a meaningful object. Let the mirror become a participant in order, not a multiplier of mess. In this way, you are not just managing appearance. You are managing vibration. You are shifting what your space says to itself into you. The real takeaway here is not don't have mirrors. It is don't let mirrors repeat what you are trying to resolve. Because mirrors are not neutral bystanders. They are energetic witnesses. And whatever they reflect, they affirm. That affirmation becomes rhythm, and rhythm becomes mood. And mood, lived daily, becomes reality. There's an old Taoist phrase that says, the body becomes the house becomes the breath becomes the spirit. When a mirror reflects disorder or waste, it affects in all three. The breath becomes shallow, the body becomes restless, the spirit becomes distracted. But when a mirror reflects order, nourishment, and vitality, the breath deepens, the body grounds, the spirit relaxes. So look around, walk slowly through your home. What do your mirrors see? If they are echoing what you are trying to heal, change them. If they are reflecting what you wish to grow, nurture them. Because what your mirror reflects, your space begins to believe. And what your space believes, your life quietly becomes. 5. In children's rooms, disturbing emotional growth. In the realm of Feng Shui, one truth is foundational and enduring. Children are not miniature adults. They are fully embodied, living fields of qi that pulse with openness, curiosity, and unprotected sensitivity. Their boundaries are not fixed. Their sense of space, safety, and reality is still forming. Everything in their environment speaks to them, not just through words or instruction, but through arrangement, vibration, symbolism, and subtle visual cues. And among all objects in a room, the mirror holds particular power in a child's field. It reflects, it duplicates, it engages, and when placed without awareness, especially near where a child sleeps, it can become a source of subtle emotional disorientation, even psychological disturbance, that neither the child nor the parents immediately understand. Let us begin with what Feng Shui sees when it enters a child's room. The priority is always calmness, containment, and coherence. These are the environmental pillars of healthy energetic development. The room must feel like a gentle cocoon, not overly stimulated, not erratic in layout, and certainly not fragmented in its reflections. When a mirror is placed near a child's bed, whether at the foot, side, or even partially within the child's visual line, it fractures that coherence. It creates visual duplication. It invites perceptual ambiguity. And for children whose brains are still learning to differentiate self from other, reality from dream, inner image from outer image, this duplication can induce confusion, low-level anxiety, or night terrors. The mirror does not mean harm. It simply reflects whatever enters its field, including the vulnerability of an unguarded nervous system. Imagine for a moment a 5-year-old child lying in bed, not yet asleep. The light is dim. Shadows move across the room from passing cars outside or the hallway beyond. Their eyes catch motion in the corner of the mirror, a ghost of themselves, or something less defined. Their breath hesitates. Their heart rate increases. They cannot articulate the experience, but they feel watched. They feel seen when they are meant to feel invisible. And the mirror, rather than offering comfort, becomes an energetic presence, a participant, a silent observer that reflects back not only form, but the fear that comes from not knowing what that form is. In Buddhist teachings, clarity arises not from stillness alone, but from stillness that is safe. The child's mind is not yet armored by logic, not yet layered with analysis. It receives directly. A mirror near their sleep space reflects back a kind of presence, a doubling of self or the suggestion of another, that enters their subconscious and disturbs the downward flow of rest. It keeps the energetic field active even when the body tries to relax. This results in fitful sleep, fragmented dreaming, or the inability to enter deep restorative cycles. And since children grow primarily during sleep, both physically and emotionally, any interference in this process becomes not just a nightly disruption, but a long-term developmental concern. I recall a family whose daughter, aged 6, had begun experiencing recurring nightmares, dark imagery, waking in the middle of the night, screaming, reluctance to go to bed even when exhausted. She was not exposed to violent media, was otherwise healthy, and had previously been a sound sleeper. The parents, loving and attentive, were increasingly distressed. Nothing in the family dynamics suggested trauma. During a home visit, I noticed a tall mirror leaning against the wall just to the left of her bed. It was a full-length mirror with a polished silver frame, placed there months earlier for convenience. From her pillow, the child could see the reflected shape of her bed, the adjacent closet, and part of the hallway beyond the open door. In low light, the edges blurred. Movement in the hall became movement in the room. I asked them to cover the mirror for a 3-week period using a soft pastel-colored cloth. No explanation to the child, just an environmental adjustment. Within a week, the nightmare stopped. Within 2, the girl began falling asleep faster and waking refreshed. The mirror was eventually removed entirely and replaced with a hanging quilt panel. Fabric, texture, warmth. The sense of threat evaporated. The child's field had been restored. This is not anecdotal, it is archetypal. The child's room should feel held. Mirrors, unless delicately and intentionally placed, interfere with that containment. They break the cocoon. They introduce complexity where simplicity is needed. In symbolic terms, a mirror multiplies what it sees. In a child's room, this might mean doubling not just teddy bears and toys, but uncertainty, shadows, ambiguous shapes. It offers a loop of visual information the child is not developmentally equipped to process. And in nighttime states, when conscious boundaries dissolve, this information becomes internalized. The child begins to sleep on guard, never fully descending into the yin softness of true restoration. We also see cases where mirrors are placed not directly beside the bed, but near play areas or desks. In these placements, the concerns shift. Here, the mirror may reflect motion, creating overstimulation. A child doing homework sees themselves in the corner of their eye. Their brain processes that input as additional presence, causing attention to fragment. They feel watched without knowing why. They fidget, they avoid, they may appear unfocused, but the deeper issue is that their environment lacks energetic singularity. The mirror creates multiplicity. For adults, this may be ignored. For children, it becomes a felt experience. Now consider the more complex emotional effects. Children, especially those under age 7, are in the phase of identity formation. They are learning who they are by looking out, reflecting inward. A mirror that constantly shows them their own body may accelerate self-consciousness before confidence has taken root. They begin to monitor themselves. They become aware of being seen, even when no one is there. This premature self-monitoring can stunt natural emotional growth. The child loses some innocence, the right to simply be in space without judgment or reflection. In a subtle way, the mirror introduces an external eye where none belongs. The child's interior process becomes interrupted by visual doubling. Over time, this can affect posture, voice, behavior. The child performs rather than rest. So what is the correction? The most elegant answer is removal. If possible, do not place mirrors in children's bedrooms at all, especially in sleeping zones. If a mirror is necessary for dressing or functional design, ensure that it is out of sight from the bed, perhaps on the back of a door, inside a closet, or behind a soft curtain. Make it something that can be revealed and hidden as needed. Let the child be in charge of when the mirror is used. This reinforces autonomy, a key element of emotional stability. If removal is not possible, cover the mirror during sleep. Choose a fabric that feels gentle, warm, and calming in color. Involve the child in choosing the fabric. This can transform the act into a soothing ritual rather than a restriction. You may also adorn the mirror with soft objects, ribbons, protective symbols, drawings made by the child that assert emotional safety. In this way, the mirror becomes less about reflection and more about integration. If the child is older and uses a mirror daily for grooming or self-expression, consider limiting its size and positioning it where natural light is present. A well-lit mirror is less likely to distort. A mirror hidden in shadow becomes a portal for misperception. Buddhist teaching reminds us that the mind, when clear, reflects all things as they are. But when clouded, it projects distortion outward and calls it truth. Children do not yet have the clarity to separate outer reflection from inner reality. Their mirrors must therefore be kind, simple, trustworthy, and most of all, still. Stillness, not silence. Stillness that says, you are safe, you are whole, there is nothing to fix. That is the mirror a child needs, and it need not be made of glass. I've walked into homes where the children's rooms vibrate with harmony. No mirrors, soft textiles, rounded furniture, calming tones, light entering through sheer curtains, spaces where imagination grows not because it is forced, but because it is not interrupted. And I've walked into rooms where something feels jagged, even though everything is new. A mirror across from the bunk bed, a wall of glossy panels reflecting the computer screen, a parent wondering why their child is restless, moody, struggling to sleep. The answer is often there, quietly echoing in reflection. Let the child's room be a garden, not a gallery. Let it hold the seed of who they are, not an image of who they might become. Let the mirror be a teacher of gentleness, or let it be removed entirely, because the space in which a child dreams becomes the architecture of their inner world. And that architecture, once formed, becomes very hard to change. The true wisdom is this: remove the mirror, and sometimes the nightmare leaves with it. Cover the mirror, and the child remembers how to close their eyes without fear. This is not a metaphor, it is a medicine. And your home, when arranged with this care, becomes not just shelter, but sanctuary. Section 3. Symbolic mirror placements that elevate energy. In the practice of classical Feng Shui, there are no perfect prescriptions, only aligned principles. Space is not a formula to be solved, but a field to be harmonized. And nowhere is this more evident than in how we work with mirrors. After understanding what mirror placements disturb energy, We come now to the more subtle art, learning how to let mirrors become allies. When placed with care, clarity, and intuitive alignment, mirrors cease to be reflectors of noise and become instruments of resonance. They do not simply show, they bless. They multiply what is worthy. They extend what is already beautiful. They anchor intention into form, and in doing so, elevate the entire vibration of a space. In essence, the right mirror, in the right place, says to the home, "Let there be more of this," and the home listens. To begin, it's essential to remember that placement is not rule-bound. It is principle-driven. The goal is not to follow arbitrary checklists, but to understand what energy is being amplified, why it matters, and how it interacts with the existing chi field. Mirrors then become tools for dialogue between interior and exterior, between stillness and movement, between the seen and the unseen. And like all dialogues, their effect depends on context. So let us explore 5 mirror placements that, when done with understanding, elevate rather than erode, harmonize rather than fragment, and invite life rather than scatter it. First, placing a mirror near a window or garden is among the most universally uplifting configurations. Nature holds one of the purest frequencies available to the human nervous system. Plants, trees, light, wind, these elements do not demand, they offer. They give rhythm without pressure. When a mirror is positioned to reflect such vitality, it breathes chi into the space in an effortless, almost poetic way. A window facing a blooming balcony, when mirrored, brings the outside in. A view of bamboo or gently swaying trees multiplied by reflection turns a room into a sanctuary. Even if the garden is small or the light soft, the mirror enhances its reach. This is not about size. It is about direction. A mirror facing greenery extends that frequency. It tells the room, here, there is life. And that message, absorbed by the subconscious, cultivates calm, alertness, patience, and even subtle healing. In one case, a woman recovering from burnout placed a round mirror beside her reading nook, positioned to reflect her potted plants and the morning light. She told me it became her favorite space, not because the furniture changed, but because the mirror made it feel like nature was leaning inward, supporting her recovery. The second elevated placement involves reflecting sacred or symbolic objects. These may include altars, prayer beads, family heirlooms, spiritual icons, or personal tokens that hold meaning beyond form. In Buddhist practice, the repetition of sacred elements is considered generative. Just as mantra repetition reinforces clarity of mind, so too does mirror reflection reinforce the presence of virtue in the visual field. A mirror reflecting a Buddha statue, if placed with respect and intention, can deepen the spiritual tone of the room. A mirror that sees a small incense altar extends that field of practice. But this must be done consciously. The mirror must not be near toilets, trash bins, or doors that open abruptly. It should not face clutter or be clouded by dust. Because when the mirror reflects Dharma, not ego, peace enters the home. That peace is not loud. It does not announce itself, but it is felt. It hums gently in the atmosphere, allowing whoever enters to breathe more deeply. I recall a monk's room in northern Thailand. Bare wooden floor, one scroll on the wall, one simple mirror that reflected a lotus incense tray. Nothing else. The mirror caught only the smoke curling upward and the soft grain of the floor. The effect was profound. You felt, without knowing why, that the space was whole. Third, mirrors placed in dining areas can symbolically double abundance, especially when the table is regularly used for shared meals. In Feng Shui, the dining room represents nourishment, not just physical, but emotional. It is where families gather, where stories are shared, where food becomes communion. A mirror that reflects a dining table multiplies not just plates, but presence. It says, there is enough. There will continue to be enough. The feeling of sufficiency, of satiety, of generosity becomes visually affirmed. This can have powerful effects in households struggling with scarcity mindsets, intergenerational trauma, or emotional withholding. In one family home I visited, the parents had long felt disconnected from their teenage children. Dinner was often rushed, fragmented. By placing a horizontal mirror to reflect the length of the table and adding a candle in the center, the room took on a new tone. Meals became longer, warmer, and eventually more open. No one traced it back to the mirror, but the space began to hold memory again. The mirror was not decoration, it was an amplifier of relational abundance. Fourth, in narrow hallways, mirrors can be used to soften stagnation and promote movement. Long corridors in homes often trap energy. Chi flows too fast or not at all. These areas feel either empty or overextended. People walk through quickly, rarely pausing. But a mirror, strategically placed, can balance the dynamic. If the hallway is too yang, the mirror can redirect some of the urgency. If too yin, the mirror can bring in light or warmth from adjacent rooms. A vertical mirror placed at the side of a hallway, especially opposite a door to a well-lit space, invites the eye to widen. It adds breadth to the movement. It allows the body to transition rather than rush. In Buddhist metaphor, the path is not just where you walk, it is how you walk. And mirrors and corridors can either make the path dizzying or intentional. I've seen homes where a narrow hallway transforms simply by shifting a square mirror to a rounded one, or by moving the reflection from a cold door to a warm rug. These are not aesthetic upgrades, they are energetic recalibrations. The hallway stops being a blur. It becomes a bridge. Fifth, mirrors placed to reflect wealth symbols can subtly activate financial intentions. This does not mean reflecting piles of pick or gold statues. It means placing mirrors near objects that symbolize steady, growing abundance. A healthy jade plant, a water feature with circulation, a modest safe tucked into a cabinet, a bowl of oranges on a console. These are classical Feng Shui representations of wealth, but more importantly, they are active, amplifier, and stabilizing. A mirror reflecting such items doesn't create money, but it affirms the mindset of readiness. It tells the space we are capable of holding more. And that affirmation begins to shape behavior. People become more organized, more generous, more discerning. In one case, a small business owner placed a mirror inside the hallway leading to her home office. It reflected a shelf with her ledgers, a green candle, and a bronze crane figurine. She described feeling more purposeful each morning. It's like the space says, you're building something real. Again, not magic, mindful environmental messaging. The mirror helped her believe in her own accumulation, not through superstition, but through repetition. Now a word of caution. Mirrors are not talismans. Their power is not in their price, their frame, or their sheen. Their power is in what they repeat, and what they repeat must be chosen carefully. A mirror placed without clarity becomes a wild card. It may reflect light, or it may reflect confusion. The best mirror is one that reflects intention, that participates in order, that extends what is already true. When mirrors are used in this way, they stop being accessories. They become companions in the silent symphony of the home. And their effect is lasting, not because they shine, but because they listen. This brings us to a deeper principle. In Buddhist teaching, form and emptiness are not separate. What we see, what we place, what we invite into our visual field, these are not illusions. They are teachings. A mirror that reflects Dharma, not ego, brings stillness, not restlessness. It does not flatter. It affirms. It does not pull you outward. It returns you inward. In that way, a mirror can become a practice. Every time you pass it, you are reminded, what I see is a choice. What I reflect is a path. In sum, mirrors are not to be feared or worshipped. They are to be understood. They are tools for echoing the invisible. And when we choose wisely what we let them echo, we do not just elevate our space, we elevate our state. Because in the end, a home is not just walls and furniture, it is a mirror of the mind. And every mirror in that home, in its silent way, is whispering a message. Make sure it's a message worth hearing. Section 4, Life Story Integration, a mirror that changed everything. There once lived a young monk in the mountains of Sichuan, apprentice to an old teacher who was known throughout the region, not for his sermons or scriptures, but for his silence. The kind of silence that didn't feel empty, but spacious, like a room you could breathe in more deeply simply by entering. The monk, like many young disciples, was eager, bright-eyed, obedient, quietly restless. He wanted to reach enlightenment. He wanted to understand the truth. But more than that, he wanted to be recognized for seeking it. One winter morning, as they were cleaning out a small storage shed behind the temple, the young monk uncovered a carefully wrapped object beneath layers of folded rice paper. When he opened it, he saw a simple round mirror. It was old, bronze-rimmed, slightly tarnished, but intact. Something about it caught his attention. Its surface was clear, but cool. Not inviting, not uninviting. It just was. The master, standing beside him, glanced at it only briefly before saying, "Don't look until you're ready to see." The monk bowed and obeyed. He wrapped it again and placed it beneath his mat. Days passed, then weeks, then years. The mirror became a presence in his life without ever being looked into. Every few months he would rewrap it, gently dust it, make sure it remained intact. It traveled with him when he moved cells. It sat quietly during his meditations. It never cracked, never aged, never disappeared, but it also never revealed anything, because he never dared look. Over time, the monk's mind softened. His ambition became subtler. He sat longer, spoke less, read not for accumulation, but for digestion. He began to notice how the bamboo bent during rain, how the wind carried incense smoke towards certain corners of the temple, how silence had different flavors depending on the hour. He no longer asked the master about enlightenment. He no longer counted his breath. He simply watched what was. He served meals. He cleaned floors. He mended robes. One early spring morning, 10 years after first finding the mirror, he awoke before the bell. The sky was still indigo, the stars still visible. He sat quietly, not seeking clarity, not resisting drowsiness, just present. And then, without thought or ritual, he stood and unwrapped the mirror. He looked, and he did not see his face. Not exactly. He saw stillness. He saw space. He saw no drama, no identity, no narrative. The reflection did not greet him with answers or epiphanies. It simply held what he now held within himself: neutrality, quiet, presence. He wrapped the mirror again and placed it on the altar, not to worship, but to remember. This story, though seemingly simple, contains more layers than many textbooks on energy or spiritual growth. Because what the mirror reflected was not truth, it reflected readiness. That is the most profound lesson for anyone working with mirrors. Not only physically, but energetically, emotionally, psychologically. Mirrors do not show us reality. They show us what we are able to see at our current level of consciousness. When the young monk first found the mirror, he might have seen vanity. He might have looked and judged his skin, his posture, his expression. Or he might have seen confusion, wondering what was hidden, hoping for something supernatural. But his master, in that one phrase, pointed to a deeper wisdom. Don't look until you are ready to see. Because until we are still, a mirror is not a tool. It is a trap. It feeds the ego with either criticism or pride. It tempts the mind with reflection without insight. It offers duplication, not clarity. From a Feng Shui perspective, this story also reveals a subtle truth. A mirror is not active until the viewer's energy activates it. That is, a mirror doesn't just reflect the room, it reflects the person's relationship to the room. It reflects attention, intention, and readiness. This is why two people can walk into the same space and feel entirely different things. One sees chaos, another sees potential. One sees a flaw in the layout, another sees a path to peace. The mirror amplifies whatever vibration meets it. So if a room is disturbed and the person is disturbed, the mirror becomes a hall of tension. If the room is quiet but the person is chaotic, the mirror becomes a point of contrast. If both are aligned, if the room is centered and the person is clear, the mirror becomes what it was for the monk, an anchor of awareness. In Buddhist psychology, this alignment is everything. The mind, when clouded by craving, aversion, or ignorance, sees through distortion. Even the clearest mirror cannot correct for that. But when the mind is settled, not attached, not reactive, it can see its own nature reflected in the simplest forms. A mirror, a leaf, a candle. The mirror becomes a spiritual device not when it is polished, but when the viewer is prepared. That preparation does not come through force. It comes through ripening, and ripening takes time. The lesson for those working with mirrors in their homes then is to ask not only where should I place this, but also what am I inviting this to reflect? Because even the most beautiful placement, a mirror reflecting a window, a sacred symbol, a flowing space, will only offer its full benefit when the energy within the person matches the clarity they hope to amplify. This is why in Feng Shui we always pair adjustments with intention. You cannot fake harmony, you must become it. A mirror facing a wealth corner will not bring money if your relationship with money is still rooted in fear. A mirror facing your altar will not multiply peace if your meditation is only performance. But when you place a mirror after cultivating sincerity, after releasing distortion, it becomes not just a surface, but a silent teacher. There is also a lesson here about timing. The monk did not look into the mirror for years, not because he was afraid, but because he understood something rare. Clarity cannot be forced. We often demand answers from life, from space, from objects. We expect immediate feedback. We want spiritual shortcuts. But mirrors, like karma, operate on resonance, not requests. They reveal what you are ready to receive. Nothing more, nothing less. When you are scattered, they show fragmentation. When you are calm, they show stillness. When you are desperate, they show hunger. When you are content, they show silence. In this way, the mirror is a karmic feedback loop. It is the face you already wear, waiting to be recognized. This becomes even more powerful when applied symbolically across the home. Every mirror in your space is waiting to be looked into, not just with the eyes, but with the energetic body. What is it repeating? Is it offering reflection or illusion? Is it anchoring clarity or doubling confusion? Most people arrange mirrors for beauty or size or trend. But once you begin to live more consciously, more energetically, those reasons fall away. You begin to sense that mirrors are not tools of decoration. They are companions on the journey. If they are too many, they distract. If they are broken, they disturb. If they are placed with care, they harmonize. And if they are met with awareness, they teach. In closing, let us return to the young monk. His journey was not about the mirror. It was about his readiness to meet it. He could have used it at any point, but he waited. He let his inner world settle before asking the outer world to reflect it. When he finally looked, he saw not a face, not a story, not even a person. He saw stillness, not still like death, but still like presence. That is the deepest kind of seeing, and that is the potential that lives in every mirror when the home is clear and the heart is open. Final wisdom. So now we arrive, not at an end, but at a quiet turning point. Throughout this reflection, we've explored how mirrors, those silent companions on our walls, are far more than decorative surfaces. They echo the unseen. They double the unspoken. They amplify the energy we carry and the energy we neglect. And when placed without awareness, they don't just reflect form, they multiply fragmentation, restlessness, stagnation, decay, or confusion. But when placed with care, they become something far more powerful, a tool for stillness, clarity, and energetic renewal. We saw how a mirror facing the bed subtly agitates the nervous system, robbing sleep of its sanctuary. We observed how a mirror facing the main door rejects the fortune that life tries to send our way. We understood how a mirror reflecting an empty wall doesn't just reflect absence, it breathes inertia into the room, making vitality feel distant. We saw how reflecting clutter or toilets, even passively, reinforces cycles of loss and disorder, pulling energy into lower frequencies. And we explored how in a child's room, where sensitivity is still wide open, the mirror can quietly disturb the safety of rest, creating shadows where stillness should live. But we didn't stop there. We walked deeper into placement as practice, not rigid rules, but principle-rooted alignment. We learned that mirrors can be allies when they reflect what uplifts, the soft breath of nature through a garden window, the dignity of sacred objects, the abundance of a shared meal, or the grounded movement of a hallway made whole. We witnessed how placement becomes prayer, how the mirror can multiply dharma if it is directed toward virtue, not ego. And then we met the story of the young monk, who carried a mirror for years but refused to look until his energy was ready. who finally saw not his face but his stillness. Because mirrors, like life, reveal only what we are ready to see. So now I invite you to pause. Look around your home, not with criticism, but with curiosity. What is the loudest reflection in your space right now? Is it light or is it chaos? Is it movement or is it presence? Is it something that reflects the energy you wish to invite, or something you've simply grown used to? Don't rush to change everything. Don't overwhelm yourself with perfection. Just choose one mirror this week. 1. Move it, cover it, reposition it with quiet awareness. Not to fix your home, but to refine your relationship with it. Let that one change become a symbol of something deeper, that you are ready to participate, that you are listening, that you are no longer willing to reflect what no longer serves. Because in the end, it's never the mirror that causes suffering, it's the direction. So don't just clean your mirrors, clear your intentions. Let the mirror reflect what you now choose to see. Wholeness, not repetition. Space, not distraction. A calm that doesn't shout but stays. And if this video has touched something in you, if even one insight has made your space feel more alive, I invite you to share this reflection. Leave a comment about your experience. What did you move? What did you notice? How did your energy shift? I would truly love to hear your stories. And please, if you found this helpful, I humbly ask you to like this video, subscribe to this channel, New Day Mindfulness, and help us reach 1,000 followers. It's a small step that lets me continue creating deeper, more meaningful content for you and for others seeking harmony in a noisy world. Because when we share clarity, it grows. And when we reflect peace, the world listens. Thank you for being here.